Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Tuesday, March the 14th. And welcome to our commentary. Our big topic today is going to be the new inflation report that just came out. This is the first one. There's another one, I think, coming out Friday or next week. So we're going to get into that. But I just want to point out a couple of things. I have a post over at the American Thinker on Tuesday morning about what is happening in Japan. You may be familiar with Japan. They're having a population problem. And what I mean by that is that they're not reproducing, they're not having enough babies. And now the prime minister is taking this very seriously, going directly to the people and basically telling them, we got to reproduce more, we got to have more babies. And the problem is obvious, when you don't have a sufficient reproduction, and that basically means two kids, 2.1 babies for every woman, your population doesn't keep up. So your population starts getting older. And that's what's happening in Japan. That's also happening in South Korea. That's happening in many, many countries in the world where the reproduction or the number of new babies is not enough to keep up with the population. And in the case of Japan, the prime minister is pointing out that, we're going to need younger workers to take care of the older workers. And that's not going to happen. And we're also going to need younger workers to take the jobs, of course, that the country needs. And then, and he didn't say this, but I'll say this: you got to have younger workers because you got to defend your country. I mean, who's going to go in the army and defend your country? So it is a serious problem in Japan, and they're going to try to come up with incentives to get people to have more children. The article that I read said that many young couples just don't want to have children because of housing issues, the cost of living. I mean, just life in general. I don't know what the real problem is, but it is a problem. It is a problem when you have these distortions and your population growth. Instead of having a country where the age groups are sort of evenly divided, naturally divided, that is, you have an older group and you've got a younger group, and you've got this kind of a problem, and it does create significant social tensions because the bottom line is you don't have enough young workers to support the older ones. So it does become a problem. Japan, South Korea is another case. So check out my post, The American Thinker, today, Tuesday morning. I've got a post coming out Wednesday morning about another story, and that is there is a Christian school up in Vermont, and it's a girls' school, and they decided not to play a game. They were going to play a game, some kind of a tournament, and they were going to play again a game against a public school where there was a boy playing as a girl in the team. And the girls said, no, we're not going to play that. We're not going to go against a team that has a boy instead of a girl. And that created a lot of controversy. The girls said, no, we'd rather quit the tournament than play that game. And they've been thrown out of the tournament by the school district or whatever. But this is, to me, an issue of common sense. If you're going to start having boys play in lieu of girls, well, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to the girl who loses her place on the team because a boy took over her place? Is that fair on the girls? I don't think so. Is that something that we should be talking about? Yes, we should be talking about this. I mean, the differences between boys and girls have nothing to do with civil rights. These are biology reasons. Boys are stronger than girls. They're taller, they're bigger. I mean, all you have to do is watch a soccer game and you can see for yourself what I'm talking about, or a basketball game or volleyball game. You can see the differences, or swimming competitions. You can see obviously the biological differences between men and girls. And in this particular case, I am really applauding these girls for taking that position. And I know they're going to catch a lot of heat. They've been thrown out of the tournament, but I applaud them. I applaud them for standing up for common sense. This is not a question of civil rights. This is common sense. Boys should not be playing in girls' teams. And I keep asking the question, who's going to, what girl had to give up her place in order to have a boy play in her place? What scholarship was lost? What future, trophy was lost by a girl because a boy took her place? I mean, it's an absolutely horrific situation. And I know that there are many states, Texas included, where they're going to be passing laws that say that you have to play sports in your gender of birth. In other words, if you're born a boy, you're going to play as a man and girl as a woman. And that's frankly the way it should be. Most states seem to be going in that direction, but there are still some where this issue is completely confusing. And I applaud those girls in Vermont for standing up for principle, standing up for common sense, really, not just principle, but common sense. Congratulations to those girls. They're not going to be able to participate in the tournament, but they took a position of principle, and that's something you have to admire. Let's talk a little bit about inflation. The inflation report came out today. If you look at the overall inflation number, where it's a little bit better than the last one. So it's not like we're going further south, but it's a little bit better, but there's still a long way to go. But when you look inside the numbers, this is where it really becomes a problem. For example, I made me some notes here. Food, the food we eat, that's plus 9%. If you eat at home, that's plus 10%. If you go out to eat, that's plus 8%. Energy overall, 5%. Now, that's an interesting thing there because the overall gasoline figure appears to be dropping a little bit, but the other costs, utilities, electricity, and all these other things are going up quite a bit. So heating your home goes up, cooling your home goes up, driving a car, maybe not so much, but still, it's an inflationary picture that the Biden administration is going to have to deal with. And the problem here is that the Fed is now once again going to have to consider raising interest rates to slow this down. But there's also the fear that that could hurt some of the banks. So it's a tough call. I mean, it's a very tough situation, but I keep saying it that if you really want to do something about inflation, if you want to bring inflation down, if you really want to stop this, what you have to do is take control of the cost of energy. You've got to put a lot of petroleum out there. You've got to pump as much petroleum and energy as you can so that the cost of gasoline goes down. And when the cost of gasoline goes down, then of course, you're going to have a much better energy situation and of course a much better inflation situation. Because energy, gasoline is what's driving a lot of this. You got to move everything in this country by gasoline or some kind of fuel, and most of the time it's a fossil fuel derivative. So that's what you got to do. You got to have a lot more energy, and you got to have more inventory, more petroleum. We've got all the petroleum in the world right here in the United States, here in Texas and Alaska and all of these other places. So let's go for it. I mean, let's do it for the country and pump as much energy as we can. We can do it cleanly, as we have shown here in Texas and in other places. We can do it cleanly, and we can at least bring some relief to the American family being torn up by the cost of energy. And energy, I continue to say, is really driving a lot of this inflation. Now, one thing that is interesting is that President Biden is going to be approving, if he hasn't approved it already, a big oil project up in Alaska. And this is upsetting some of his base, but it is something that has to be done. We have to drill for more oil. And I'm glad to see that he's at least going in the right direction when it comes to that topic. Whether he will, do more in the country as a whole, I don't know. But what he's doing in Alaska is at least an indication that, there's a little common sense returning to the Oval Office. I feel very strongly that this administration made some big mistakes at the very beginning by going after fossil fuels the way they did, and they've created, to a large extent, the inflation that we are dealing with. So it's a good move on the part of the president. Go through with that, and not just approve oil projects in Alaska, approve them elsewhere, so that we're pumping and we're putting a lot of energy out there in the marketplace so that the price of gasoline drops to about $2. I think if that were to happen, if gasoline were to come down from $3 to $2 here in the next year or so, I think you would see a huge drop in inflation at the same time. No question about that. Well, let me leave you today with a happy birthday. We're going to say happy birthday, happy number 95 to Frank Borman. If you're familiar with Apollo 8, Frank Borman was one of the three men who was part of that historic crew. They were the first crew to go around the moon, entered what they call the dark side of the moon. And they did it on December 24th, 1968, when they went around the moon, and then they spoke to the people back here in the country by they spoke to us by radio, I guess, from up going around the moon. And Frank Borman, after this particular mission, after the Apollo 8 mission, he got out of the business and he became the president of Eastern Airlines. I don't know, some of you may remember some of those commercials that he used to make back in the 1970s as the president of Eastern Airlines. So Frank Borman, one of the Right Stuff, one of the original members of the Right Stuff, those early astronauts who took us to the moon, and one of the most historic missions, Apollo 8. So happy number 95 to Frank Borman. I'm not sure what he's doing now or where he lives, but I tell you, he made a big impression when he was up in that Apollo 8, and then all those years that he was an executive at Eastern Airlines. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.